Bernard, the cold and distant CEO, and Amanda, the poor secretary, come from two completely different worlds. Yet, through challenges and misunderstandings, an unexpected love begins to blossom between them. Will they overcome the barriers to be together? If you enjoy this story, don't forget to like, share it with your friends and family, and especially subscribe to the channel so you won't miss even more meaningful stories. Bernard Foster is a prominent and cold-hearted man, the CEO of a major multinational technology corporation. At 32 years old, he has conquered every peak in his career, relying solely on his talent and decisiveness without any help from connections. No one dares to argue with Bernard at the company because of his unique demeanor. An indifferent appearance, always introspective and distant. His decisions are made swiftly and uncompromisingly, creating an atmosphere where those who work with him feel tense and sometimes fearful. All employees in the company know how harsh Bernard is. He doesn't easily forgive even the smallest mistakes and always expects perfection from those who work with him. His passion for work and the company fills his heart so much that he has no time or energy for romance. Everything for Bernard revolves around numbers and strategic decisions. He doesn't believe in the weakness of love, and he doesn't want anyone to intrude into the icy world he has built for himself. Amanda Miller, the female lead of the story, is completely different. At 26 years old, Amanda is still young but possesses sharp intelligence and impressive organizational skills. She grew up in a poor family where everything had to be done on her own to survive. Amanda received no help or favoritism from her family and had to work very hard to become independent, make a living, and pursue her education. Though she didn't attend prestigious universities or have connections to help her, Amanda is proud of what she has achieved through hard work and perseverance. Amanda has a simple yet charming appearance. She always strives to dress neatly to convey professionalism, even though she is financially struggling. She maintains a positive attitude and works hard, even when life's difficulties sometimes leave her feeling exhausted. However, Amanda never allows herself to be weak or give up. To her, every day is an opportunity to learn and grow. In her work, she is meticulous and handles every situation calmly and intelligently. One fateful day, Amanda received a call that she never expected. She was invited to interview for the secretary position at Bernard Foster's corporation. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity she couldn't pass up. Although she had no experience in the industry, Amanda knew this was her chance to step into the world she had always dreamed of. However, upon arriving for the interview, she couldn't help but feel nervous and anxious. She had prepared thoroughly, researching the company and Bernard, but meeting the cold, distant CEO made her feel incredibly tense. During the interview, Bernard only glanced at her with sharp eyes, as if evaluating every detail of Amanda's attire, speech, and gestures. She could clearly feel the strictness of this boss, but couldn't take her eyes off Bernard's intense gaze. His stare was both sharp and unreadable. Amanda felt like she was undergoing a mental test, but she managed to stay calm, answering every question clearly and confidently. In the end, despite her lack of experience, Amanda was chosen because of the qualities Bernard saw in her: her intelligence, organizational skills, and particularly her decisiveness during the interview. Bernard admitted that, although Amanda lacked experience, her problem-solving ability was impressive, and that was exactly what he was looking for. Though Bernard didn't show any special affection or emotion, Amanda realized she had earned a rare opportunity, and she started her position with the determination not to disappoint him. When Amanda entered the company, the atmosphere was tense and filled with pressure, but she refused to let that hold her back. Everything at the company seemed too large and distant from her, but she knew that hard work and showing her abilities were the only ways she could survive in such an environment. On her first day, Amanda faced a major crisis when one of the company's key partners demanded an impromptu meeting. Everything was in chaos, and Bernard, indifferent to the stress of the employees, gave orders in a strict manner. In this situation, Amanda didn't panic. She calmly handled every situation and promptly prepared the materials for the meeting. Bernard, despite his cold exterior, couldn't help but notice Amanda's calmness and decisiveness in this emergency. He began to realize that she wasn't just an ordinary person. Amanda's intelligence and ability to handle situations impressed him, though he didn't show any joy or connection with her. From that first tense encounter, Bernard quietly observed Amanda's work and began to think differently about her. As for Amanda, although she admired Bernard's talent and decisiveness, she saw him only as a strict boss, nothing more. She could never think of developing romantic feelings for her employer, especially when her life was filled with so many struggles. Since Amanda officially began working as Bernard's secretary, her life changed dramatically. Bernard's company is an incredibly stressful environment, where the demands are always high and every task must be completed with absolute perfection. Despite his cold and distant demeanor, Bernard expects his employees to give their best, with no room for error. Amanda quickly realized that, in Bernard's eyes, work was always the top priority, and he never showed leniency toward anyone, whether they were old or new employees. She began working closely with him, assisting him in important meetings, organizing Bernard's schedule, and managing many administrative tasks. Every day, Amanda had to face a huge workload, from planning meetings to preparing materials and handling the emergency situations that Bernard didn't hesitate to assign to her. Though she was new, Amanda quickly demonstrated her intelligence and impressive organizational skills. She was always on time, met deadlines, and, most importantly, handled problems skillfully, never letting Bernard down. However, beneath her professional demeanor, Amanda felt an enormous amount of pressure. Bernard's demands became increasingly strict, the meetings were constant, and she began to feel stressed and even exhausted from the workload. Unlike other secretaries, where one could clearly see the closeness and care Bernard showed, the situation with Amanda was completely different. Bernard always kept his distance. He never appeared friendly, always maintaining a cold demeanor and rarely showing any emotion. Though at times Amanda felt tired and wanted to talk to Bernard about the stress of her work, she knew that it was impossible. She could only carry the burden herself, never allowing herself to show weakness or complain. Meanwhile, Bernard had his own reasons for his coldness. He didn't want anyone, even Amanda, to intrude into his personal world. For Bernard, emotions were not something he sought. His company, career, and success were all he cared about. However, over time, he couldn't help but notice Amanda's special qualities. Even though he maintained control in every situation, every time Amanda solved a problem or handled an emergency, Bernard was deeply impressed. She was not only intelligent, but also decisive, confident, and always completed her work excellently. Once, when the company was facing a major issue related to a contract with a partner, Bernard required Amanda to prepare a detailed report within 24 hours. This task was not only a challenge for Amanda, but also a huge pressure, as she had to work with a vast amount of information in a very limited time. Bernard gave the order once and provided no assistance. Still, Amanda persevered, working tirelessly to complete the job. After 24 hours of continuous work, Amanda managed to send Bernard the report, without missing a single detail. When Bernard received the report and read through it, he was undeniably impressed. Though he didn't show any excitement or praise, deep down, Bernard truly appreciated Amanda's efforts. However, he didn't allow himself to express that. Instead, he only made a cold comment. "Good, but next time, do it faster." Even so, Amanda felt proud of what she had accomplished, despite not receiving any acknowledgement from Bernard. Bernard's feelings for Amanda began to change, though he didn't admit it. The more he worked with her, the more he realized the strength, dedication, and resilience she brought to the company. Amanda seemed to be the only one capable of facing the tough challenges the company threw at her without a word of complaint. Meanwhile, Amanda, though she had started to sense Bernard's growing interest, continued to maintain her distance. She knew their relationship could only be one of boss and secretary, and she didn't want to complicate things further. However, Bernard's increasing attention to Amanda made her feel uneasy. She could feel his gaze every time she completed an important task, but she couldn't understand the true meaning behind it. There were times when she caught Bernard looking at her longer than usual, and during those moments, her heart would race, but she wouldn't allow herself to think too much. Amanda couldn't imagine having a romantic relationship with her boss, especially when her career was still in the early stages and full of challenges. Though he wouldn't admit it, Bernard began to feel an undeniable attraction to Amanda. He started paying attention to every action and gesture of hers, feeling a strange connection with her that he had never experienced with anyone else. However, he couldn't escape the thought that a romantic relationship would disrupt his work and affect the company. Therefore, he continued to keep his feelings hidden, showing no outward signs of affection. Both of them were struggling with their own emotions, yet unable to break free from the shell of professionalism. Their relationship gradually became more complicated, not only due to work, but also because of the hidden feelings they could neither recognize nor admit. The relationship between Bernard and Amanda grew increasingly complex, especially as the secret emotions both were concealing began to surface, leading them into awkward situations. One day, when the company was in a tense phase due to an important project, Amanda received a call from home. She listened in silence, her eyes darkening upon hearing the news. Her mother was hospitalized in critical condition. A wave of worry rose within her, and though she tried to suppress her feelings, she couldn't stop being anxious. She hurriedly packed her things and prepared to leave the office to go to the hospital, even though she knew that work was piling up and couldn't be neglected. At that moment, Bernard walked into her office and saw her in a rush. "What are you doing?" Bernard asked, his voice as cold as usual. Amanda tried to hide her emotions and quickly replied, "It's just a family matter, boss. I'll be back soon." Bernard kept staring at her, his gaze sharp, yet holding a care he couldn't fully acknowledge. He had never seen Amanda so vulnerable before, and it made him feel both unfamiliar and somewhat uneasy. Unlike his usual coldness, this time Bernard couldn't turn away as he usually did. "Go ahead," Bernard said, his eyes briefly softening before he immediately returned to his usual stern demeanor. "Just make sure you come back and get to work once you're done." Amanda was surprised by Bernard's concern. However, she didn't dare think too much about it. She assumed it was simply the behavior of a proper boss, nothing more. The worry about her mother still kept her from focusing on work or reflecting on Bernard's behavior. When Amanda returned to the office that afternoon, everything seemed to return to normal. Although she had spent a tense day dealing with family matters, she couldn't ignore the oddity of Bernard's actions. Why had he shown such concern for her? Was it just about work, or was there a deeper empathy behind it that he couldn't explain? However, Bernard said nothing more about the events that had happened earlier. He continued to expect Amanda to complete her tasks as usual, and Amanda didn't dare ask questions or say anything further. She felt awkward, unsure whether she should thank Bernard for allowing her to leave at such a crucial moment. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything between them was still just about work, and Bernard had no reason to offer her special attention. From that point on, their relationship became more strained. Bernard began to take a greater interest in Amanda's work. He paid attention to how she handled every situation and offered help when she encountered difficulties. Their conversations no longer focused solely on work, but also included personal advice and small gestures of support that Bernard had never shown to anyone before. One afternoon, when Amanda faced a critical issue at the office and couldn't solve some important problems with the project, Bernard unexpectedly entered her office. "Do you need help?" Bernard asked, his voice no longer cold, but instead filled with a warmth that Amanda couldn't deny. Amanda was surprised, but she didn't dare believe that Bernard genuinely cared for her. She simply thought he was doing this because it was his responsibility as a boss. "It's fine, boss," Amanda replied, trying to maintain a professional tone. "I'll handle it." However, Bernard didn't leave. He stood there, observing her for a moment, then continued. "Don't hesitate to ask if you need anything. Sometimes the workload can be overwhelming, but you don't have to do it alone." Amanda felt a lump in her throat, but she didn't want Bernard to see her weakness. She bit her lip, trying to focus on her work, but the feeling of Bernard's concern only made her more anxious. She couldn't understand why Bernard was helping her like this, and she couldn't easily accept his help either. Bernard's assistance left Amanda feeling conflicted. On one hand, she could feel warmth from him, but on the other, she didn't want to be exploited or feel dependent on her boss's help. She didn't want him to see her as weak, and she especially didn't want these actions to lead to unnecessary misunderstandings. The conflict grew. Amanda began to suspect that Bernard was only using his concern to maintain a straightforward boss-employee relationship. She couldn't figure out whether he truly had feelings for her, or if it was all just part of a boss's attempt to keep the company running smoothly. This uncertainty made Amanda reluctant to open up, and she began to distance herself from Bernard more. Every time Bernard showed concern, Amanda felt confused and couldn't clearly explain her emotions. She didn't want to complicate things, but her heart couldn't stop when thinking about Bernard's glances and gestures. And it was this misunderstanding that wore her out and made her drift further away from him. After days of tension and constant conflict, a major event occurred, completely changing the relationship between Bernard and Amanda. The company faced a serious challenge when a major project Bernard was overseeing unexpectedly encountered a problem. The key partner in the contract suddenly withdrew, and Bernard's team had to scramble to find a solution to save the situation. This was an unprecedented crisis in the company's history, and Bernard's demands were extremely high. He not only needed an immediate recovery plan, but also required creativity and decisiveness to persuade stakeholders. With the company on the brink of crisis, Bernard had no choice but to assign Amanda a large portion of the responsibility. Though he still had some reservations about her capabilities, Bernard realized that, throughout their time together, Amanda had consistently demonstrated sharpness and the ability to perform under pressure. She was the only one who could handle this issue swiftly and effectively. Amanda was no longer just a regular secretary. She was someone with vision and resilience that Bernard couldn't overlook. When Bernard called her into his office to inform her of the important task, Amanda was stunned. She never expected to be entrusted with such a major responsibility, but she also understood that this was an opportunity she couldn't pass up. Bernard had placed his trust in her and had faith in her ability to resolve the issue. However, along with the excitement came an overwhelming sense of anxiety. Amanda knew the company was in danger, and she would have to face many challenges to bring everything back on track. In the following days, Bernard and Amanda had to work more closely than ever. Tense meetings took place continuously, and they had to make important decisions together. Under Bernard's leadership and Amanda's support, the company slowly began to find a solution. Despite the exhaustion from the massive workload, Amanda persevered, not allowing herself any rest. Bernard also stayed in the office, sometimes working late into the night with her to finish reports and prepare materials for crucial meetings with partners. In these intense moments, the relationship between Bernard and Amanda slowly changed. Amanda began to notice that Bernard's acts of concern were no longer just orders from a cold boss, but genuine support. The times he helped her solve problems, the encouragement he gave during meetings, made Amanda feel something warmer. Bernard was no longer just the boss she had thought him to be. He was someone who truly cared and understood the difficulties she was facing. One evening, when they were working late, Bernard suddenly stood up and approached Amanda. He looked at her intently, his eyes no longer cold, but filled with deep concern. "You did well, Amanda," Bernard said, his voice soft but sincere. "I know this work hasn't been easy, but you've done a great job." Amanda looked up at Bernard, her heart pounding when she saw the tenderness in his eyes. She sensed the change in his attitude, and for the first time, she wondered whether these words were simply encouragement from a boss to an employee, or if there was something more behind them. The next day, Bernard decided he could no longer hold back his emotions. After so many moments of reflection, he knew he couldn't keep quiet any longer, especially when his heart could no longer extinguish the feelings he had for Amanda. He wanted her to understand that his acts of concern, his help, were not just for work, but because he truly felt something special for her. Bernard called Amanda into his office. In the quiet space, with only the hum of the air conditioner and the documents on the desk, Bernard looked directly into her eyes, his gaze filled with sincerity and seriousness. "Amanda," he began, his voice low and emotional. "I can't keep quiet anymore. I love you. And I don't want you to just see me as your boss. I want us to be something more, if you feel the same." Amanda stood frozen, her eyes wide in surprise. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. Bernard, the one who was always cold and never showed his emotions, had admitted that he loved her. Amanda's emotions at that moment were a whirlwind. She didn't know how to react, as feelings of joy, emotion, worry, and unease flooded her heart. In a brief moment, Amanda felt a warm wave of emotions fill her heart. However, shortly after, she felt confusion and fear. She couldn't deny that she had feelings for Bernard, but there were too many differences between them. She was just a regular secretary, while Bernard was the CEO of a large company. How could she accept his affection when there was such a vast gap between them, not only in terms of their professional positions, but also their backgrounds? Amanda didn't know what to do with these emotions. She looked at Bernard, her voice trembling as she spoke. I don't know what to say. You're my boss, and we can't have a relationship. I don't think I can." She couldn't finish her sentence, as her heart overwhelmed her reason. The situation made everything more awkward than ever. They stood in silence for a long moment, each lost in their own thoughts, not knowing what to do next. After the long conversation in Bernard's office, the atmosphere became heavy, as if they were both carrying an invisible pressure. Amanda stood there, filled with mixed emotions, her mind spinning, unsure of what to do next. Her heart was racing, but her reason tried to protect her from these intense and unclear feelings. Bernard stood opposite her, looking at her with an expectant gaze, yet also filled with some anxiety and hope. "You don't understand," Amanda began, her voice soft but still hesitant. "We come from two different worlds. You're the CEO, and I'm just a regular secretary. Can you love me? I don't know if I can be the right partner for you." Bernard listened quietly, his eyes full of patience and understanding. He had known this wouldn't be easy, and he didn't expect Amanda to open up immediately. But he knew one thing for sure: his feelings for her were real, and he also knew that love had no room for hesitation and fear. It needed trust, courage, and determination to break down all barriers. "Yes, we have differences," Bernard began, his voice warm but firm. "But those things don't matter to me. Amanda, I love you not because you're a secretary or because you do your job well. I love you for who you are, a smart, strong woman, full of passion with a big heart. You don't just make me admire you for your abilities, but for the person you are." Amanda listened to Bernard's every word, feeling as if those words were a refreshing stream flowing through her heart. Bernard's feelings for her weren't empty words but genuine emotions. This made her feel deeply moved, and gradually, the ice wall in her heart began to melt. She realized that not everything in life had to be calculated and reasoned out. Sometimes, love just needed a leap of faith and a little bit of trust. "Bernard, I don't know what to say anymore," Amanda said, her voice trembling, but now without fear. "I'm just afraid I'll disappoint you. I fear that my circumstances will be a huge obstacle. My family, my life isn't like what you have." Bernard walked over to her and gently took her hand. "You don't need to be afraid," he said, his eyes shining with determination. "We will face all challenges together. I love you for who you are, for the qualities you possess. Family, circumstances, work, none of that matters. What matters is that we can go through everything together, not just because of love, but because we will be partners in this." At that moment, Amanda could clearly feel that what Bernard said was sincere. She realized that the love he felt for her wasn't because of her work or the help she gave him in urgent situations, but because of the unique qualities in her that he had recognized. The qualities she considered weaknesses, The difficulties in life she always kept hidden were exactly what made Bernard love her even more. Her intelligence, independence, and resilience had won his heart. Amanda couldn't help but feel a change in herself. She had once thought that love between her and Bernard was impossible, that the differences between them would always be a barrier. But now, standing face to face with him, she could feel the sincerity in every glance, every gesture from Bernard. She could no longer hide from her feelings, no longer keep up the protective shield to shield herself from potential hurt. She wanted to open her heart, to let this love grow, no matter what difficulties lay ahead. "You're right," Amanda said, her voice soft but full of resolve. "I'll try. I won't hesitate to open my heart anymore. We'll move forward together, no matter how tough the road gets." Bernard smiled, his eyes filled with happiness and relief. He gently hugged Amanda, feeling her heart beating in sync with his. No more distance between them, no more hesitation or fear. They had accepted each other's love, not for any other reason, but because they belonged together. "We will get through everything together, Amanda," Bernard whispered in her ear. "Because you deserve this love, and I promise I'll always be by your side." Amanda closed her eyes, feeling the warmth from Bernard's hand holding hers. She no longer felt alone. Everything around them seemed brighter. Love was no longer just a vague emotion or a distant theory. It was a truth that she could feel and accept. And in that moment, Amanda knew she had found not just a great boss, but the man with whom she would build a future full of love and happiness. Together, they walked out of the office door, where work, careers, and challenges couldn't separate them. They were ready for a new chapter in their lives, one where love would be the driving force to overcome all hardships. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to click like, share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories.